How did this Henry J. Kaiser turn into this? Well, stay tuned as I take you through the fascinating story of the Kaiser-Darrin. This is the 1954 Kaiser-Darrin on display at the Barrett-Jackson's Scottsdale Auto Auction. What sets this car apart, among other things, are these very unique pocket doors that open by sliding into the front fenders. There were only 435 total built by Kaiser Motor Corporation, and we have one of them here on display in Scottsdale. Let's take a deep dive into the history of this magnificent car and how it eventually entered production. But to fully understand this car, we must first get to know this guy, Howard Dutch Darrin, the designer of the Kaiser-Darrin. Howard Darrin, or as his friends called him, Dutch Darrin, was born in Cranford, New Jersey in 1897. At the early age of 10 years old, Howard found himself working for, believe it or not, Automobile Topics magazine, where he assisted the editor in providing information for publication. Dutch Darrin's dad, David, try saying that 10 times fast, invented and patented the first electronic solenoid switch, then went on to be president, owner, and CEO of the Automatic Switching Company. That's right. To this day, when your automatic sprinklers turn on, you can thank Howard Dutch Darrin's dad for that. How did this boy from New Jersey end up in Paris? Well, it was because of World War I. In 1917, Dutch Darrin enrolled in the aviation division of the U.S. Army's Signal Corps. This was pre-Air Force days, the infancy of the airplane. After a few short weeks of training, he was off to France to serve as a fighter pilot. The story could end right here. You see, during World War I, the life expectancy of these heroic pilots was only a few short months. But by some miracle, Howard Darrin was one of the few to return. After World War I, Dutch started one of the first passenger commercial airline businesses. But after a crash killing 4 of his employees, he had decided to sell the business and pursue his first passion, which was building and designing automobiles. This was the golden age where coach builders would build custom bodies to be placed on high-end chassis. Dutch bought 2 Delahaye chassis and went to work. Soon he met car dealer and automobile aficionado Thomas Hibbard. The two decided to partner and start a coach building business in Paris, creating Hibbard and Darrin of Paris. Roaring 20s, Paris was the place to be. There was an abundance of wealthy business people that wanted custom automobiles, and Paris was quickly being known as the fashion capital of the world. Darrin's company developed a process of casting aluminum that they called Silent Light, which was molded, cast aluminum into a mold of the body, then to be placed on a chassis. Most coach builders at that time were still using wood attached to the chassis of the vehicle and then would apply aluminum sheeting over the wood. Hibbard and Darrin spared no expense and used the best chassis such as Rolls-Royce, Mercedes-Benz, and Maybach. These turned out to be beautiful automobiles, as you can see here. At the end of the 1920s, the Great Depression hit Europe pretty hard. Demand soon ceased. But Darrin knew of a place that movie stars like Errol Flynn and Clark Gable still wanted custom-built coaches. So Darrin closed up shop in Paris and moved to Hollywood, California. By 1937, Packard turned out to be Dutch Darrin's chassis of choice. He would start with Packard's like these examples and totally rebody the Packard and turn them into Packards that look like this. This is a beautiful example of Dutch-Darrin's work, a 1939 Packard Series 1703 Super 8 that was completely rebodied by Dutch-Darrin in Hollywood. Some of the styling cues that made this car so special are the long hood, the swept back windshield, the doors in the reverse opening position. Notice how the front of the door is higher than the rear of the door, and then as it goes back to the rear fender, it swoops up and then drops down again. This was a design cue that Darrin used on many of his vehicles, and it was also present on the Kaiser-Darrin. This design cue was eventually named the Darrin Dip. In this photo of this beautiful yellow Kaiser-Darrin, you can see the Darrin dip of the rear of the door meeting the rear fender. Another design cue that Dutch-Darrin was known for was the padding of the dashboard. This is the 1939 Packard Super 8, and now we're looking at the 1954 Kaiser-Darrin. Beautiful. Dutch-Darrin's attempts to partner with Packard went mostly unnoticed until one day Dutch decided to park one of his creations in front of the convention center where they were holding a national Packard dealer meeting. The enthusiasm for this car from the Packard dealers was so overwhelming that the Packard executives could no longer ignore Dutch-Darrin. This resulted in a partnership with Dutch-Darrin and Packard from 1940 to 1942. With the start of World War II, Dutch-Darrin again joined the Army Air Corps, this time as a flight instructor stationed in Boulder, Colorado, and then in Las Vegas, Nevada. After World War II, Dutch-Darrin did some designing for this gentleman, Henry J. Kaiser, who was best known for building the Liberty ships that helped win World War II. He developed and mass-produced over 2,700 Liberty ships from 1941 to 1945. Now that the war is over, Henry is turning his attention from being a shipbuilder to an automobile manufacturer. I'll do a video on him shortly. Please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss that video. In the late 1940s, the Kaiser Motor Group decided to build a smaller, economical car for the masses. But during production of this vehicle, they started realizing that it really wasn't appealing and called on Dutch-Darrin to add some design cues. The car was already pretty much finished in its design, and the only thing Darrin could do is put lipstick on the proverbial pig, so to speak. Darrin went to work adding some design cues. You notice the unique front wheel openings, and if you look right underneath the door handle, you'll see that body line that represents the famous Darrin dip. I'll soon be doing a video on the Henry J. There's quite a story about this car, so stay tuned to my channel for that, coming soon. Dutch felt that the Henry J never got the design attention that it deserved. He wasn't happy with being called in at the last minute and always wondered what would happen if he was able to design the body from the ground up. Always the innovator, just like in the 1920s when he was working with cast aluminum, Dutch-Darrin now was working with this new product called fiberglass. With his own funds and unbeknownst to Henry Kaiser, Dutch-Darrin bought a Henry J, removed the body, and began building a fiberglass body to be placed on the Henry J chassis. This makes the Kaiser-Darrin the first fiberglass car to enter production, even beating the Corvette. When the prototype was completed and he showed Henry Kaiser, Henry was furious. He told Dutch Darrin that they're not in the business to be building sports cars. When Dutch explained that he had built and designed the car with his own funds on his own time, Henry quickly calmed down. This is just another example of Howard Dutch Darrin's tenacity. Henry's new wife, Alice, was there with them during the unveiling in these conversations and asked Henry, "Why aren't you in the business of building sports cars?" stating this is the most beautiful car she has ever seen in her entire life. And just like that, Howard Dutch Darrin got the okay to begin production on the new Kaiser-Darrin. The Kaiser-Darrin came in 4 different exterior colors. The first is champagne white with its beautiful red interior with the red top to match. Then there was the sail red, which came with white interior with matching top or with black interior. Notice that the dashboard is also painted in the exterior color sail red. It's a beautiful looking interior. The third was this beautiful satin yellow with matching satin yellow interior and soft top. These certainly were not your bare bones sports car. Notice the little turn signals underneath the front headlights and the attention to detail. The turn signals were made the same shape as the front center grille. Then there is this very unique color called pine green. If you were in the Navy, this color should be familiar to you. Remember, Henry J. also built all those Liberty ships? Yes, this is the color that the Navy picked for the interior of their naval vessels. The Navy picked this color for its calming effect for the sailors below deck, and the other person who really liked this color was Henry J., who insisted that pine green be one of the 4 colors for the Kaiser-Darrin. Like the satin yellow color, the pine green also came with pine green interior and a pine green top. All Kaiser-Darrins came with a 3-speed manual transmission with overdrive. The sliding doors did not come with glass roll-up windows. Instead, you got these plastic covers that if it started to rain, you could snap them onto the door and the top. Another unique feature taken from the early 20s is the top that would open in 3 positions, fully closed, halfway open, and fully open. The Kaiser-Darrin would get its engine from the newly purchased Willis Corporation. It is the 161 cubic inch F-head engine that powers the Willis station wagon. For you gearheads, this engine was unique because it had the exhaust valve still in the engine block like a flathead engine would have, but it had the intake valve in the cylinder head. But even though it had the intake valve in the cylinder head, it still only produced 90 horsepower. The Kaiser-Darrins were only produced for 1 year, 1954. By the end of 1954, the Kaiser Corporation was struggling to make a profit. The Kaiser-Darrin was struck its final blow when a freak snowstorm damaged the Toledo, Ohio plant. Henry Kaiser stopped production of the Kaiser-Darrin, and then in 1955, Kaiser Motors stopped producing passenger cars in the United States altogether. The Kaiser-Darrin's biggest criticism is that it was underpowered, especially to go up against the likes of the new Corvette and the Triumph TR2. Howard Darrin's Paris and Hollywood influences made the car too expensive and too luxurious for the sports car market of that time. But nonetheless, we'd have to admit this car is truly a work of art. In true Dutch Darrin fashion, not ever wanting to give up, he had purchased the leftover parts chassis and bodies from the damaged Toledo plant and began production of up to 50 Kaiser-Darrins minus the Kaiser in his Hollywood studio. This time improving upon them with adding superchargers to the Hurricane F-head engine, and also rumored that some got a Cadillac V8 installed. Howard Dutch Darrin passed away in 1982, but was inducted into the Automotive Hall of Fame in 2010. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe to my channel, and I will see you on the next video. Thank you.